Think World Cup stadiums are just big bowls with grass? Not this time. Number 1. A tournament spread across a continent. The first weird thing about the 2026 World Cup stadiums is that they are not clustered in one country or even one compact region. They are scattered across the United States, Canada and Mexico, which means the venue list stretches over thousands of miles and multiple climate zones. One match can be in the dry high altitude of central Mexico, another in the humid American South, and another in a Canadian city with a totally different travel rhythm. FIFA has never staged a 48-team World Cup inside a host setup this geographically wide, so the stadium story is not just architecture, it is logistics, weather, recovery time, and jet lag wearing a soccer scarf. Imagine doing this today as a fan on a budget. Absolute menace. Number 2. Mexico City brings altitude into the group chat. Estadio Azteca is already legendary, but one of its weirdest traits is something players cannot even see: altitude. Mexico City sits roughly 2,240 meters above sea level, which means the air is thinner than at most other 2026 venues. That can affect breathing, recovery, and how the ball travels, especially for teams arriving from sea-level stadiums in the United States or Canada. Back in earlier tournaments, players and coaches openly talked about fatigue and how the pace felt different in high-altitude conditions. The science is simple and rude. Thinner air means less oxygen per breath, so repeated sprints feel heavier, faster. Even the ball can move a little differently through the air. So yes, one World Cup venue is basically adding a subtle boss level. Very polite of it. Number 3. One stadium has a screen. So big it feels judgmental. AT&T Stadium in Arlington, one of the 2026 host venues, is famous for its gigantic center-hung video board. When it opened, that screen became one of the defining oddities of the building, because it is not just large, it is cartoonishly large. In American football games, it has occasionally become part of the conversation because punts have hit it during play. That is not a normal sentence, yet here we are. For the World Cup, the field setup changes, but the stadium still carries that same oversized energy. The weird part is how the building turns spectatorship into theater. You are watching the match, but also a screen the size of a small, ego-driven moon. Back in the day, giant scoreboards felt futuristic. This one feels like it wants top billing. Number 4. Some World Cup stadiums were built for a different sport entirely. A lot of the 2026 venues in the United States and Canada were originally designed with American football or Canadian football in mind, not soccer. That means wider sidelines, different seating priorities, and sometimes a vibe that says very confidently, this was not the original plan. FIFA has strict pitch requirements, so several stadiums need temporary adjustments to fit the dimensions and presentation expected at a World Cup. The weird part is that these are some of the richest, flashiest stadiums on Earth. Yet they still need a little makeover to host the world's biggest soccer tournament properly. Back then, many stadium owners built for local league economics first, which made perfect business sense. Now the global sport arrives and politely asks everyone to rearrange the furniture. Number 5. Kansas City has a stadium named after a bank but sounds like a sci-fi villain base. GHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium is one of the oldest 2026 host venues, which makes it weird in a field full of sleek modern monsters. Arrowhead opened in 1972, so compared with some other sites, it comes from a very different stadium philosophy: raw crowd energy, huge bowl design, and less obsession with futuristic polish. It is especially famous for noise. Kansas City fans have set records for stadium loudness in American football, and that matters because acoustic intensity changes the feeling of a venue even when the sport changes. During the 2026 World Cup, that old-school bowl could feel less like a luxury showroom and more like a pressure cooker with seats. Back in the day, architects built intimidation in concrete. Subtle stuff. Number 6. Vancouver's venue is basically a shapeshifter. BC Place in Vancouver is one of the more visually distinctive 2026 stadiums because of its cable-supported retractable roof. That roof gives the building a split personality. Open, it feels lighter and more breathable. Closed, it becomes a very different indoor-style event space with its own acoustics and lighting character. For a major tournament, that flexibility is useful because weather, broadcast needs, and crowd comfort can all influence operations. The weird part is how a single stadium can offer two emotional settings depending on one mechanical decision overhead. At the time, modern retractable roofs became prestige features. They were sold like engineering magic. And to be fair, giant moving ceilings are pretty hard to downplay. Imagine explaining to someone in the cheap seats that the sky has a hinge. Completely normal stuff. Number 7. Miami's stadium was designed with shade as a survival strategy. Hard Rock Stadium is the 2026 host, and one of its oddest practical features is the way its canopy roof was built to cover seats while leaving the field mostly open. In South Florida, that is not a quirky flourish. It is climate management with a designer wallet. Miami heat and humidity can be brutal, especially for daytime events, so the roof helps protect spectators from direct sun while keeping the field exposed for the game environment. The result is a stadium that feels half sheltered and half baked, which honestly sums up many summer afternoons there. Engineers and venue operators care about this, because shade changes fan comfort, concession flow, and even the perceived intensity of an event. Back then, stadium shade sounded boring. In practice, it is elite architecture doing damage control on the sun. Number 8. Los Angeles has a stadium that looks like a giant luxury gadget. SoFi Stadium, the Los Angeles area host, barely looks like what people used to imagine when they heard the word stadium. It has a sweeping, translucent roof, an enormous, open-sided form, and a polished, futuristic aesthetic that makes older venues look like they were assembled by a committee of rectangles. One of its strangest features is its scale mixed with its softness. Instead of a blunt concrete fortress, it feels like a massive consumer product someone accidentally enlarged to city size. During the 2026 World Cup, that matters because the building is as much a spectacle as the match itself. At the time, stadium design shifted toward experience branding. Places like this became the result. Back in the day, you went to a game. Now the building itself is also trying to win man of the match. Number 9. Monterrey Stadium sits next to mountains, like it is trying too hard to be cinematic. Estadio BBVA in Monterrey has one of the most dramatic natural backdrops among the 2026 venues. The nearby Cerro de la Silla mountain gives the stadium a visual identity most venues would absolutely invoice extra for. The weird thing is how much the setting changes the emotional feel of the structure. A stadium is usually judged by seats, roof lines, and amenities, but here the surrounding geography is doing a lot of the work. Broadcast shots will love it, obviously. Viewers at home will think, wow, beautiful. Meanwhile, people actually attending still have to deal with traffic, heat, and normal human concerns, because nature does not validate parking. Back then, many famous stadiums became iconic because of urban skyline shots. Monterrey decided to bring in a mountain. Slight overachievement. Number 10, the final weird fact is that these stadiums are really a test of scale. The 2026 World Cup is not just using famous venues, it is testing whether giant multi-purpose stadiums across 3 countries can be smoothly turned into one coherent tournament experience. That is the strangest part when you step back. Some stadiums are old, some are ultra-modern, some sit at altitude, some fight heat, some lean on roofs, and some were built for entirely different sports cultures. Yet for a few weeks, they all have to feel like chapters of the same event. Historically, World Cups usually carry a stronger visual identity from one host nation or one architectural style. This one is more like a controlled stadium multiverse. If it works, it will look visionary. If it gets weird, well, the material for future documentaries is already writing itself. Which stadium fact surprised you most, and which 2026 venue are you most curious to see on screen? Did we miss a weird one? Drop it in the comments. If you want to see more of this, make sure to subscribe. See you in the next video. Goodbye.